Welcome, Pewter Report readers and listeners, to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast on a Victory Monday. They're all Victory Mondays, energized by Celsius. I am John Ledyard from pewterreport.com. Along with me on this fine Monday afternoon is Mark Cook, also from pewterreport.com. Mark, Scott has been suspended from the podcast, and Matt and Taylor are continuing suspensions, extended suspensions from the podcast. Not the first time for those guys, man. You hate to see them continue to step out of line like this.
Yeah, they're the Josh Gordons of the Pewter Report staff. I guess I shouldn't say that. I don't think they're suspended for the same reason Josh Gordon has been suspended over and over. But they might. I mean, they're young. They're young kids. It is 2021. So anyway, clearly I'm the looks of the operation, as anybody can see if they're looking at the screen right now. So. Thanks for having me in, John. I got to do something about these glasses, though, because when I was on Channel 8 last weekend, I looked like some sort of cyborg with the reflection of the glasses, and I don't really know what to do. Maybe if I turn my screen down, does that help?
That actually does help. Yeah,
really.
But you probably can't read your screen. Yeah,
not very good, which is fine. I don't really want to see me. I can actually see the text. We're getting people coming in. T-Kraz from the Ronnie and T-Kraz show just popped in. Did you see that? What's up, T-Kraz?
Special guest.
Wow.
Not a guest, I guess. Special viewer, special listener.
We're gonna have we'll have T-Kraz on if we can convince him to stay awake till 4 o'clock. I'm surprised he's awake now. He's got to get up like at 3 in the morning because he lives about 10 states away and has to drive in real early for the show. But hopefully,
and when we were doing it at night all the time, we were doing it at night during the playoff run. I would love to have those guys on, and then I'm thinking, there's no way they're going to be.
Yeah, it would be tough.
He says absolutely anytime you come on, that'd be great. No, we'll definitely do that now that we're back at that 4 p.m. time slot. We'll work something out with them, by the way. Met Ronnie when I was down there. I haven't met T-Kraz yet. Met Ronnie when I was down there. I've met with Zach a couple times, Blobner, and met Ronnie Lane.
You met Jay Retcher at the Glory Days event a couple weeks ago. Yep. That was good.
Yep.
Ian Beckles is a great
dudes.
guy. Really good crew. John Momola has a heck of a crew over there at 620, and we've been really fortunate to be partners with them, John, for probably 5 years now, something like that, going on 5 years, and our we just finished up our 3rd year with Channel 8, so. Anyway, very fortunate to have the relationship we have with those guys. It's amazing how many people, John, from the 620 appearances. Taylor was telling a story the other day that his Uber or Lyft driver at our dinner last Wednesday night, found out Pewter Report. He goes, "Oh, listen to you guys on 620." You know what I mean? And I've had Uber guys before who say the same thing. They're in their car all day long. They're a lot of them are listening to sports radio. So. It's really cool to realize, how many people you really do reach out there, and we appreciate 620 and all they do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no question about it. We also appreciate our sponsors over at Celsius, who are bringing you everything that you see on this show today, as they always do. Celsius powers lives every day with essential, functional energy, no sugar. You're looking for an energy drink that tastes great, gives you that pop and sizzle that you get from your soda. Look at Mark Cook down in 2. Love it. Love it. You can do that with them. I'm telling you, these things are sweet. I'm doing the grape today, but I was doing the orange, I think, the last time you have on the show. A bunch of different flavors. A couple people have DM'd me this week telling me they or tweeted at me and said they found some new flavors that I haven't tried yet, so I got to check out. But check out Celsius, ladies and gentlemen. It is terrific stuff. The best energy drink out there. Burns body fat, accelerates metabolism. There's no sugar. It's so good for you. And my wife just found out, by the way, she's going gluten and dairy free lately. So she was like, I don't know if I can keep drinking them. She can. And so she's pretty excited about that too. So they've really thought of everything. And the most amazing part is they've still produced just an awesome tasting drink. Great company, great people to support. So definitely check out Celsius and get yourself some. You can go to Celsius.com and you can purchase them there. Find the stores to purchase them at, or you can go to Amazon and purchase the variety pack itself. Celsius. Try a bunch of different flavors. It's really good stuff. Make sure you check it out. Mark, we got a lot of Bucs talk to get to on the show today. And we're going to focus all on the offensive side of the ball. If you haven't, go over to pewterreport.com. You can check out my article on the offensive side of the ball for the Bucs, kind of giving a little bit of an offseason outlook a little bit. But we're going to talk in more detail about the offensive side of the ball, go through them position-wise. Also, make sure you go check out Monday morning's mailbag. Mark answered some pretty good questions. I thought that was one of the better slated questions that we've had in a while, Mark. There were some good ones in there and answered a couple good ones in there. So check that out for sure as well. But let's start with the quarterback position, Mark, because it's the one I think we can move through the quickest, while at the same time noting that there may be some important crossroads for the Bucs eventually down the road. Tom Brady, obviously going into the last year of his contract with the Bucs, more likely in your mind, the Bucs extend Tom Brady's contract this offseason for one more year, or maybe more, but probably one more year, or the Bucs draft a quarterback in the first or second round. What's more likely to you?
I really think extending Brady. I think, again, through creative cap maneuvers and things like that, by adding a year or two on the deal, I think they can lower that cap value. Now, again, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand how teams do that, where they add a couple years on and somehow it lowers the amount. But they seem to be able to do that. The Saints are masters at that, right? Of course, it's catching up to the Saints this year. Although I don't know what Mickey Loomis has. He's got some sort of voodoo in New Orleans or something to be able to field a pretty competitive team year after year being up against the cap. But this year's a little bit different with them being close to $100 million over. Now, they were able to reduce and restructure Drew Brees' contract, even though he's going to retire. But that's going to save them several $1,000,000. So they're down around $65 million over the salary cap, which is still a lot. They've got a lot of work to do. Yeah. But going back to what you're saying, John, adding a year or two onto Tom Brady could be financially beneficial to him salary cap wise, but also stability of the franchise. We wonder there were people who were saying before the Super Bowl, national people, not local people, because us local folks knew Brady was going to come back next year, but some were wondering if he walks off in the sunset. If he wins another Super Bowl next year, that question is going to be even louder. But if he's got a couple years left on the deal, and we saw what he said during Super Bowl week, that he'd like to play past 45 if he stays healthy enough, maybe that gives the franchise a little bit more stability, and it certainly doesn't put pressure on them to draft his heir apparent. Jason Light was on with you and Scott a couple weeks ago. They really like Blaine Gabbert. I don't think Blaine Gabbert's the long-term answer. Ryan Griffin has the greatest job in the history of sports, by the way. I think he's played in 8 NFL snaps. He's made close to $7 million. Sign me up, please. Swear. I'll take half of that amount of money. But anyway, I would say, Brady signing an extension, which may be a benefit to the Bucs cap-wise, and certainly to the stability for the next couple years of the organization, is more likely, I think, to them drafting one. I think, that they'll consider drafting one, but they won't force a quarterback. I mean, they won't force that. If there's a guy they've got ranked high enough at 32, if somebody they have ranked, say, 15th or 16th were to drop to 32, then that changes things. But I don't believe that's going to happen.
Right. I'm with you completely. I think more likely is a Brady extension. I even think that's fairly likely to throw one more year on that deal, maybe spread out the cap hit, or I'm not sure if that'll be the strategy, or maybe just ensure that he's there before, he gets to that point. I really think that, again, you're picking at 32. People have to remember that. It's like, we know quarterback of the future is definitely a need and something that the Bucs are going to pursue eventually, but there's no indication that needs to be this offseason per se. Maybe it ends up needing to be this offseason. Maybe they go into next offseason and Brady decides to retire and they are looking for the answer. Well, at that point, you could draft one, and you could know that you've got the rest of your roster kind of in place and where you want it to be. And then you're pursuing, those guys. But for this year, I think it is about adding to the talent at other positions. Also, you're probably going to have 5 quarterbacks. The way people are talking, you're probably going to have 5 quarterbacks drafted in the top 15. Unless the Bucs are trying to jump all the way up there, I just don't see it happen. You don't see the 32nd pick jumping up that high very often. So, it really is it's one of those things that creates a quandary for the Bucs that if they were to try and do that, they'd really be forcing it, I think. And the chance to get in the top guy or a top guy aren't very high, without giving up most of your draft probably. And this is the year teams are going to take them high, Mark. These guys are going to fly off the board because there's a lot of teams that need them.
Yeah, and we talked about this last week, John, that maybe this is the year the Buccaneers, because there's not a ton of needs on this football team. Now, as far as for 2021, there will be needs down the road. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with Carlton Davis and how the young secondary, do they continue to develop? Do you need more guys back there? Shaq Barrett, is he back? Is JPP has just one more year? And Ndamukong Suh, there's a lot of things you've got to look at a couple years down the road. You can't just be 100% focused on 2021, but there's not any glaring needs is what I'm trying to say. So maybe this is the year that the Buccaneers do take a flyer on a guy and let him sit a year or two behind Brady. But you know what? Something I was reading on Twitter, it was a debate between some people, and I don't remember who. I wish I did because I like to give people credit. But they were talking about maybe, maybe this is the year that the Buccaneers trade that 32nd pick. Maybe there's a quarterback that slips a little bit, which I'm with you. Those top 5 guys are going to go pretty quick, but maybe a guy were to fall and a team really falls in love with a quarterback and wants to move up, and maybe they give up that number 1 next year. That's, I like the idea of moving back in the draft. I don't really like the idea of trading for future picks, but if you could trade for a future number 1 for a 32nd pick, and we've seen it happen in the past before, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing to do, and I think it's something that certainly they should consider doing based on the fact there's just not a glaring need. They don't need a right tackle this year, right? They had to have a right tackle last year, and they needed that safety in Antoine Winfield Jr., but they don't need that this year. So there's a lot of different options, and they've got a lot of different flexibility with that 32nd pick. It's not going to be as fun draft night for fans, just because we're so used to a top 10 or a top 15 pick being one of those big names. You're going to have to study this draft a little bit more because we all know the top 15 guys. Casual people know the top 15 guys, but when you get out of that top 20 and you get down towards the top of the second round, then you got to study a little bit more. But anyway, that's what you're here for, John. You are going to present a million options at 32. Now, you did a mock draft last week. It was a first-round mock draft for all teams. What did you have, in case people haven't read it, where did you have the Buccaneers going there?
Yeah, I had them going with Najee Harris, the running back from Alabama, and I think, it's one of those things that's going to probably – this, to me, is the conversation that will extend probably the longest this offseason would be my guess, Mark, because it's very unlikely the Bucs will make a high-profile move at running back, like signing an Aaron Jones or even like a James Conner. I don't even think that's going to happen, not that I would even rule out running back if they sign somebody like Connor. But like somebody like that, I don't think the Bucs are going to do that this offseason. I do think Leonard Fournette's going to get more money somewhere else. So if that happens, Mark, if I'm right and Leonard Fournette gets more money somewhere else and the Bucs decide cap dollars are precious right now, we don't want to allocate those resources to a running back when we feel like throughout the season, more or less, they proved they thought he was pretty replaceable at certain times during the season. So we don't want to do that. So my question is, does running back then become the biggest offensive need this offseason? I mean, when you look at the other position groups, there are certainly paths to them becoming needs. If Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown both were to walk, we don't think that's going to happen. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Rob Gronkowski were to walk, Cam Brate were to be cut at that point. Okay, there's no certainty at the tight end position. We'll touch on that in a second. Offensive line, all 5 starters are back. Down the road, we could see there being potential concerns, and again, we'll touch on that in a second. But right now, for 2021, I don't think there's a bigger need on offense than the running back position. But also, you have to think about the fact that it's not the greatest value of all the positions in the field. What I said at the beginning of last season was I don't think the Bucs have a great running back room. This was before the year started. I said it on this podcast. I don't think the Bucs have a great running back room. I also don't think that that's the end of the world. There were times, Mark, in the regular season where I wanted to eat those words because it looked like the Bucs were going to lose football games because of how bad that backfield was in the passing game. But they did step up when it needed. And again, running backs grow on trees, man. Like you can have I thought the Bucs had one of the worst running back rooms in the league in terms of what they do that provides value, the most value, which is in the passing game. For most of the season, that was a struggle. But again, This
They won a
position
Super
group,
Bowl, though. They won a Super Bowl with a
exactly
terrible
right.
running back group, if you
Right.
want to call it that. And I wouldn't call it that because I like Ronald Jones a lot, and Leonard Fournette was very good in his spot duty, particularly in the playoffs. But they need a complete running back. I mean, I think that really cements this offense as being a no weakness offense. I mean, look, they scored 30 points down the stretch. They scored more than 30 points in every playoff game, including the Super Bowl, with a pedestrian running game. I think they finished 28th in the league or something like that in rushing last year, and they still won a Super Bowl rather handily. So it's not like it's a desperate need, but if you're going to pick one area on the offense where, it could actually make this offense even better, it is running back. And I don't know that I mean better in the terms of they're going to rush for more yards next year, because Ronald Jones did average 5.1 yards a carry this year. Now, he missed a couple games with the COVID and the broken finger, but I mean, they were effective at times running the football. It's just that, Bruce Arians loves to throw the football. I mean, that's where the weapons are. And certainly in today's NFL, this isn't the 1970s NFL where you've got to have a Franco Harris or a Walter Payton, or even going back to the Bucs with Ricky Bell or James Wilder. Those things aren't as crucial. They help your offense, but it's not necessarily the end of the world as we saw this year. But there's going to be some free agents out there, I think. Some guys that Tom Brady is familiar with, has played with, and played well with him in the past at New England, and that could be a guy that the Buccaneers target free agent wise. And make no mistake, in a year that the salary cap is going to be no more than, I think, 181 and a half, somewhere around there. That's where we're talking the salary cap's going to be.
Like that, yeah.
There's going to be a ton of guys that are going to gamble on 1-year deals, prove themselves deals, and with a team poised to repeat as a Super Bowl, you're going to have guys calling you. You're going to have agents calling Jason Light saying, hey, I got James White on the phone, or I got Rex Burkhardt on the phone, or I got Malcolm Brown of the Rams on the phone right now. They'd love to come play with Tom Brady and win a ring. So I think they're going to find somebody, but I don't disagree with drafting one, particularly I don't know that I draft a running back ever in the top 10 or the top 15. But at the same time, think about if the Buccaneers had drafted Dalvin Cook, which they didn't. It's fine. I'm not arguing that point. I know there was some concerns, and legitimate concerns, about taking him that early. But just take a look at this offense if Dalvin Cook had been a part of it the last couple years, instead of O.J. Howard. Pretty scary. So there are instances, if it's the right running back, and I like Najee Harris a lot. I really do. I think he is going to be a very good running back in the NFL. I think he's going to be better than the kid that the Raiders drafted. His name's slipping my mind right now. A couple years ago, yeah. And I think he's going to be one of the better Alabama running backs. And Alabama running backs, going back to Ingram and even farther back, have done well in the NFL because they come from a pretty damn good system up there in Alabama. But it's not the end of the world, like you say, John, because they won a Super Bowl with one of the worst rushing backs. If you want to look at that in the NFL.
Right, exactly right. I mean, this is not like, again, we can say it's a huge need while also saying it's not the most important need. There are differences, you know what I mean? Like, you might need a guy to play most of your snaps at running back this season. I mean, that's the way where they're at on Ronald Jones. I think the player that fans and the team might be the furthest apart on right now is Ronald Jones. Fans see a guy who would have got to 1,000 yards if he hadn't gotten hurt at the end of the regular season, and they say, this guy could be the guy. He took a huge step in the right direction. To me, it's just more about the offensive line got better. The run scheme got a little bit better. They got a little bit sharper at the things they did. He took advantage. Certainly, I think he had a fine season running the football. I've said many times I like him more than Leonard Fournette or any other running back on the team running the football. But I'm telling you, Bruce Arians has said it himself straight up. The value at the position that this team needs is in the passing game. Like you said, they are a passing offense first and foremost. Yes, they need a guy who can run the rock at times. There's no question. But this is a passing football team. I think they're fourth in the NFL in neutral pass rate this season. So this team wants to throw the football. That's always who they're going to be under Bruce Arians. As long as that's true, and as long as Tom Brady is continuing to be the best quarterback in the league at getting through progressions and knowing when to utilize the check down and get the ball out quickly to his running back, you need a guy who can catch at this position. And you need that in all offenses, but I'm just saying Brady is going to find that guy more often than other quarterbacks because he is not Patrick Mahomes going to run around and try and throw the ball 80 yards to make a play. Like, that's not who he is. Yeah. He's going to look at the progression, and if he sees the linebacker is slow getting out of the flat because he's sinking underneath the slant or whatever, he's going to get it out to the running back, and he wants that running back to get 5 yards after that catch, at least. The Bucs didn't have a guy that did that consistently last year. Leonard did flash that a little bit down the stretch during the year, but they need a guy who can do that every time. And that's why I like Najee Harris to them. I don't think he's the only option. I want to see who else is on the board. There's other positions that are more valuable. It's not a great class at a lot of other positions where I can say, oh, these great player at this position group, especially defensively. It's just not a very good defensive class, which is another reason why I think there could be a great argument for trading down, which we'll touch on in a second too, Mark, as we move to wide receiver in this class. But the last thing I'll say about running back, one thing you said piqued my interest there is that you said this offseason, with the cap being the way that it is, a lot of players might take one-year deals. And I thought about that, and I thought about where the league's at in the running back position, and it made me think, I'm not saying it's going to happen because I think Leonard played himself into more money, but it wouldn't shock me if that is the situation where the cap does end up at 180, and that's fine. Bucs can survive at 180, but I wonder if he gets the money thrown at him that he thinks he's going to get thrown at him this offseason. And I wonder if he sees Tampa Bay, as they currently are, with Ronald Jones in a contract going into a contract year, and Leonard Fournette clearly having surpassed him in crunch time at the end of the season, most important games of the year. If Fournette sees that and says, you know what, I might come back to Bucs on one, maybe gets a little bit better offer for 2 years, but it's not what he wants. And so I might come back to the Bucs on a 1-year cheap deal. Something to think about. I'm not saying it's going to happen.
No, I agree.
It's something to think about.
In this year, in this climate, in this salary cap world, in a COVID year, it makes a lot more sense. If this were a normal season, then Fournette, we can probably say, is 99% gone. But I would say right now, there's at least a 30-40% chance that he's back on a 1-year deal because, he loved this locker room. He loved the coaching staff. I mean, he grew up a lot. And let's face it, John, this is a guy that was open for all 32 teams last year, right? Before the Buccaneers signed him. He cleared waivers. The Jacksonville Jaguars didn't want him anymore. So, again, it's not like he came in and had 1,000 yards himself this year. Now, he was fine and was effective in the playoffs, but I don't know that he did anything to command, more than $5 or $6 million a year anywhere. And I don't even think he's going to command that much. But I don't know that the Buccaneers want to pay him a whole lot more than they did last year. And I don't remember the exact number, but wasn't it around $2.5 million, somewhere around there? For like 1 year. I don't think they would want to do more than that this year, to be honest with you. And I don't know, that he's going to get a ton more than that out on the open market just because of the way the salary cap is this year. And you know what? I'm with you, John. I don't have any problem at all with Leonard Fournette, excuse me, coming back. But I still think the Buccaneers definitely need to try and find that LaShawn McCoy that they thought that maybe they were going to get this year. That guy that can be a third down back, that can pass protect decently, but really catch the ball out of the backfield and convert and make people miss. Those guys, when they caught the ball, they rarely made anybody miss. And that to me is a third down back. You need to be able to make that linebacker miss, because if you do that, it goes from a 6-yard gain to potentially a 20-yard gain out of the backfield. And again, Tom Brady has made a living checking down to running backs who've had a ton of yards after the catch over the years.
Yeah, there's, you mentioned pass protection, and before we jump over to wide receivers, I get to some of these questions and then jump over to wide receivers. I think that's a really good point. There were a couple interceptions this year that happened because of pass protection issues. I'm not talking about just like a bad play or a throw or a tough throw or Brady got hit. I'm talking about literal turnovers happened because I think of a couple right off the top of my head. First interception in the Chiefs game, Ronald Jones screwed up the protection. Interception against the Panthers, protection was a part of the issue. I think there was an overthrow to Gronk, may have been miscommunication on the route. Protection was a part of that issue, though. Ronald Jones missed the guy he was supposed to pick up in that protection. What was the other one? Oh, so it was Packers game. Leonard Fournette is supposed to abandon his fake and pick up that blitzer. Right. He didn't do it on the third interception against Green Bay. He didn't do it, and because of that, Brady was shocked by the fact that he was getting hit as he threw, so he tried to throw one up before getting dropped for that sack and basically taking them out of field goal range. Didn't get enough on the ball and ended up floating up in the air and getting intercepted. So I say all that to say, when you talk about, Ronald Jones had 1,000 yards and so, or what had 1,000 yards, and so he's the guy, and the Bucs think that, they don't. And so maybe Ronald Jones comes out and starts balling in the pass game, and all of a sudden pass protects in year 4, Mark, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
You either got it or you either can catch a ball or you can't catch a ball, man. Yeah. I mean, we go back to playing in the backyard with your buddies, right? There were guys that could just go up and get a football, or even at PE in school, middle school or high school. There were just guys that were just natural pass catchers, and there were other guys that just had bricks for hands. And I'll go back to Todd McNair, his first year here in Tampa Bay. He's the running backs coach for the Buccaneers, saying when he got here, Ronald Jones had no idea how to position his hands to catch a ball. I wish you would have been there in that press conference, because
Well, I remember you telling me about
it. He even demonstrated how, catching a ball, out of the backfield, your hands have to, just the fact that he had no idea how to do that was just mind-boggling, that this guy had made it to the NFL and had never had to really learn that. And I don't know if it's that, I don't know that he's not going to, John, in his fourth year. He's just not. I mean, he is who he is, and he's a solid player.
Right.
He's a 1,000-yard rusher, but he's not a 3-down, 25, 30 touch a guy in the NFL, in my opinion.
Right. Nope. I agree with you. And even if he does somehow do it, you can't go into the season counting on it happening. You just can't. Not after the way last season ended. Get to a couple questions real quick before we move to wide receivers, tight ends, offensive line. Just Me Pooh Shimmy says, "Hey John, which free agents do you actually think will get to come back and who will be gone?" Talked about it a little bit on recent shows. I won't get into a ton of detail just because of time on this one, but I do think the top guys will be back: Chris Godwin, Levante David, Shaq Barrett, Rob Gronkowski, Ryan Suckup. Don't know about AB. Really don't know if anybody knows about AB. Going to try to get some content up on AB and his weird offseason that he has coming up this week, actually, to talk about with Bucs fans, because I think there's a lot of people that just don't know what's going on there. So don't think Leonard will be back. No Joe Haig. I'm trying to remember who else, but I think that's everybody. But yeah, that's kind of how I see it right now. What are the chances the Bucs sign J.J. Watt? Actually, especially if they can't re-sign Shaq, it doesn't look like the chances of signing J.J. Watt are great, just because it seems like he wants to stay up north and he's got some options there. So we'll see what he ends up doing. I did write about how they could sign him for sure if they wanted to, and we'll see if they pursue that. My guess is he might make a decision on a team before the Bucs are ready to offer money. Right now, I think the Bucs' priority is bringing everybody back. If for some reason he's still available at that point in time and he wants to play in Tampa, I think it'll happen, but I think it might be a priority thing right now.
You think he may end up with his I just dropped my microphone. Sorry about that.
You did that last time.
Live TV. I've got to figure out a better system to this base that holds it in here. I'm balancing it on my computer. But maybe he ends up in Pittsburgh. What would you think about that?
I don't think there's any chance that he ends up in Pittsburgh. I know people think that. And I think betting odds, even at the best betting odds, end up in Pittsburgh, but they just don't have any money. And I don't know how they would pay him. I think it's Bills, Packers, maybe the Bears. I know the Bears have been thrown out there, but my guess would be Bills or Packers. Browns make sense too. Bills, Packers, or Browns. That would be my top three guesses for him right now. Tom Bucs fans wants to say, will Brait stay? We're going to talk about this actually in a second, so I'll hold this one. Will Brait stay? If you want to know if Brait will stay, keep listening. We're going to talk about that in a second. Chances Bucs draft running back in the first or second round, decent. I think very decent. We'll know after free agency, and if we see if they bring everybody back, but not Leonard, we'll know that chance has probably gone up that they draft a running back in the first or second round. Also, what about trading down from the first round and still drafting a running back? Let's talk about this in a second here, Mark, the OBJ, Chris Godwin rumors and why they're pretty ridiculous. And the franchise tag on Godwin, too. I see you down there, Gary Buffy. We'll get to that question as well. But first, I want Mark to give you the opportunity to talk about our good friends and sponsors over at Briar Greaves.
John, Briar's staff is growing as a business, and they're busy as ever. What a year for the insurance world. Record number of named storms this past year. Hurricane season's upcoming now. Flooding. We saw what happened in Texas with the freezing weather. There were wildfires in California. I mean, it's like Revelation in the Bible, right? You gotta get protected, and there's one place to do it. Listen, there's nobody listening to this podcast right now that doesn't need some form of insurance that Briar Greaves carries, whether it's home insurance, whether it's life insurance, whether it's auto insurance, whether it's business insurance. They can handle it. Boat insurance. Tom Brady, call Briar Greaves right now. You need insurance on that boat, especially if you're ever going to let Rob Gronkowski drive it. Listen, Briar Greaves has been around for over 30 years. They're Tampa Bay fans. They're big Buccaneer fans. They're season ticket holders. They love the Tampa Bay community, and they want to serve you. The best thing about Briar Greaves, John, is all you got to do is just give them a call, and you're going to speak to Briar, you're going to speak to Sam, or they're going to call you right back because, they're just they're that type of personal agent. You're not just a policy number to Briar Greaves. You are an actual person. And, I know everybody that needs insurance probably has their coverage already, but why not shop around your automobile insurance? Why not shop around your homeowner's insurance? What if you could save $300 or $400 or $500 a year? Think about that. Maybe you can upgrade your season tickets for the Bucs this year with the money that you save. Give Briar or Sam a call today, 813-876-4166. Again, 876-4166. Call Briar, call Sam. Tell him you heard him on the Pewter Report podcast. Give him a call. Just tell him what you got. Get your deck page out for your homeowner's policy, for your auto policy. Let them know what you have. They'll shop around. They'll call you back. They'll say, I can save you some money or I can't save you any money. And in the meantime, you'll have some good chats with some big Buccaneer fans. Briar Greaves, big fans of the Pewter Report podcast, good friends of the Pewter Report podcast, and huge Buccaneer fans. Give them a shout. Again, that phone number is 813-876-4166.
Gary Buff wants to know, why don't we use the franchise tag on Godwin? Well, actually, Gary, that is probably exactly what is going to happen. I think Chris Godwin is probably not going to get paid this offseason. Again, we've said it a lot on the pod, but I know some people don't hear every time, so I try to repeat some of this stuff. So bear with us if you've been with us for every show and you've heard us say this a lot. But the tag going to be a little over $16 million based on the projected cap right now. We'll see what ends up happening with that, but that'll probably be the price tag for Godwin as opposed to 20, 18 at the least, but probably closer to 20 would be what Godwin was looking at. So somewhere in that range is what he'd be asking for. Might be the rare situation, Mark, where the tag works out for everybody, because Godwin could hit the market after a huge year in 2021, could be in the conversation for highest paid receiver in the league at that point. If he comes off another year like 2019, definitely. I mean, 1,300 yards, right, 86 catches, 9 touchdowns, still super young. Can play inside or outside, blocks, great character, great hands, reliable. You know what I mean? Like, it's the list goes on and on. The guy's a stud. So he can reset the market at that point in time. It's possible. Cap's going to go up too. So you've got that. And you also don't have to deal with the great free agent class of wide receivers and another great draft. Well, you probably will have a fourth straight great draft class of wide receiver, but probably not like the last 3. I don't think it's due to fall off a little bit. So I do expect that to happen with Chris Godwin, Mark. However, let's look at worst case scenarios, as we always do on this show, just to be prepared. If Godwin and AB have some uncertainty, does wide receiver then become a need? And here's what I'll pose to you. Let's say AB isn't back. He prices himself out of the Bucs range. Teams feel good about the person at this point in time, whatever that means. And they say, okay, we're going to, Seattle throws money at him or somebody throws money at him. They want you to come and be our number 3 guy, and we're going to try and get Russ on the right track here. Bucs are like, all right, see ya. Okay, so they've got Tyler Johnson, Scotty Miller, Mike Evans under contract. Let's say Godwin gets the tag, but there's this understanding that Godwin could be asking to be the highest paid receiver in the league next year, and you might not be able to give him that kind of money if you're bringing back other people as you want to for this season, and if you're trying to eventually sign Carlton Davis, who Bruce Arians has called a top 5 corner in the league, if you're trying to sign him long term. So again, it's a scenario, but in that case, do you think Tyler Johnson has done enough to make the Bucs feel like, okay, yeah, like definitely he's going to be the guy that replaces Godwin, just straight up 1-to-1? Or do you think that the Bucs say, oh, we don't have a lot of needs if Tyler Johnson could be the long-term, baby Godwin, the backup to Godwin's role in this offense? Remember, critical role in the offense. Larry Fitzgerald role that he played for Bruce Arians in Arizona, needs that big slot. Hines Ward role that he played in Pittsburgh. Bruce Arians always relies on this guy. He might not be the best player, but he's a volume guy. You have to have a playmaker and a consistent, reliable guy in that role. It's always been a star player. I just don't know if he's going to say, all right, yeah, 5th rounder Tyler Johnson. That's our guy, period. Godwin's playing on the tag. Like, whatever happens. But Tyler Johnson's our guy. If Godwin moves on, he prices himself out. Mike Evans on the outside, Scotty Miller on the outside. I just don't know if that's going to be the case, Mark. I wonder if this scenario, Godwin gets tagged and they don't feel like a long-term deal. They feel like they're far apart when they get to talk. Right. We feel like we're just not there. And AB goes elsewhere. I don't know that they're like, yep, we'll just run it with Tyler Johnson, Scotty Miller, Mike Evans, and whoever we draft. And knowing that they need a quarterback probably in next year's draft, we'll run it back with these 3. I wonder if wide receiver becomes a need if they fall in love with somebody who's on the board in the first round.
Well, being that it's a very deep class this year, that's definitely a distinct possibility.
Right.
And even if it's not, even if they feel they can re-sign Godwin, and I was speaking to somebody today, they'll tag Godwin most likely, but they have until mid-July to work out a long-term deal with him. And so, they'll tag him to keep him from hitting free agency next month, but that's not going to stop them from looking to maybe extend him or come up with a new long-term deal for him. here's something that I'm going to say that Buccaneer fans are going to lose their mind, and I don't agree with necessarily. But if the Bucs tag Chris Godwin at some point in 2022, if they've got to make a choice, would they choose Godwin based on his age over a guy like Mike Evans? Could Mike Evans be, on the not on the chopping block? I don't want to use that word, but again, if you had to pick one of those two guys for the next 5 years, you almost have to go with the guy that has the younger guy who's 24 with more upside that is a little more versatile in what he does. I think. So again, I still think here's what I think
between the two though.
I don't either, and I really believe they're going to get. I'm not worried about Godwin long term. I think he's going to be here. They're going to franchise tag him, and I think they would sign him next year. If you're talking $20 million versus it's 15.8 right now is the number that I got earlier today, roughly, like you say, 16 million, somewhere around there for the franchise tag, and you're talking $20 million for a long term deal. That's only $4 million. That's really nothing in NFL terms. It's not like it's $3 million and $20 million. I mean. If they're willing to pay him $15 million a year this year, another $5 million for a long-term deal per season, I don't think is out of the question. If they're willing to pay him $15 million this year, they want to keep this guy long-term because he is only 24. I was surprised when I did the Monday mailbag today. I was just looking at some of his background information, like, Jesus, this guy seems like he's been here for 5 or 6 years, but he hasn't. But he's only 24 years old, and I think there's still so much more that he could do if he stays healthy. One thing about Chris Godwin is, and I don't think fans notice all the dirty work that this guy does. It's not an easy position to just throw Tyler Johnson in there and say, okay, all of a sudden now you're going to play inside. Now you're going to have to block in the running game. I don't know what Tyler Johnson's strengths and forte is when it comes to doing that. It takes a special breed to play the position or is used the way that Chris Godwin is used in this Buccaneers offense. It's not easy. It's a very physical position. So it's not just a matter of can Tyler Johnson run fast and catch the ball, because we know that he can do those things. But at the same time, Tom Brady has also made the career of so many receivers that people just didn't know of fifth-round guys like a Tyler Johnson. But you know what I'm saying, up in New England, guys that started the season out and you had no idea who they are. And next thing you know, they're approaching 1,000 yards for the season and catching big touchdown passes in Super Bowls. So I don't know, man. I think AB's gone. It wouldn't bother me one single bit. I think you've got some guys back there. Godwin comes back. AB's gone. Tyler Johnson gets a bigger role. Scotty Miller gets a bigger role. And I don't know if you draft a guy then, but yeah, if you keep Godwin, then I don't think it's nearly a priority. But if for some reason, like you say, John, you're thinking to yourself, we can't afford Godwin next year, which makes no sense because the salary cap is going to go up big time. And it's going to go up big time because the TV, what I was reading is the network. I mean, the NFL is looking to double the amount for the broadcast rights right now.
They'll probably get it.
They probably will. And it's just going to blow up the cap for the following year because the revenue is just going to go crazy, especially if they can get fans in the stands this year.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it could be a situation where the cap, we see a dip this year and then skyrocket next year, like go back up to where they thought it was going to be. NFL ain't hurting for money, ain't going to be hurting for money. No. And so long-term, it's not a concern. So this is exactly why you're right. And by the way, this is exactly why the Bucs can sign everybody that they want. Just arrange the deal so they hit big in 2022, 2023, because the cap is not going to stay down. It is going to go up. COVID is not going to have that long-term of an impact. And so, yeah, I think that the Bucs can sign people with assurance that they're going to have. They already have the most cap room in the NFL of any team in the league for 2022, and they just won the Super Bowl. That's crazy. So they have lots of wiggle room to be able to bring back everybody this year. People are looking at 21 mil in the cap this year in space. It's not like that. I mean, that's like the most linear way to look at it, but you have to look at the cap a lot differently. I know it's confusing.
John, I had somebody in the Bucs front office tell Scott and I a couple years ago, and I'm trying to remember the exact way that they said it to us, but basically they said they could clear $20 million. I think that was the figure, with basically a couple phone calls, right? Reworking a couple deals. Yes. I mean, they can make money. And again, we've seen the Saints somehow continually manipulate the cap year after year. Now, again, it's finally catching up with them. And the Buccaneers don't want to get in a position where they're hurting, but knowing that the cap is going to go up drastically in 2022, should help them be able to work out some deals and create some money for 2021. They can keep, like I wrote in the mailbag, they can keep as many of the guys as they want. Now they're going to choose probably not to. Fournette, maybe a guy they choose not to. Antonio Brown, a couple other guys, but they can keep the guys if they really want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And people are asking, about Chris Godwin or Mike Evans. I don't want to spend too much time on it or anything. And we'll talk more about this whole wide receiver room on a later podcast for sure, especially as we get closer to free agency. We'll go in depth on it. But it is hard to compare the two. They just do really different things. I don't think I know Mike Evans. Right. They can. I know Mike Evans can't do what Chris Godwin does. I know that.
But
I don't think Chris Godwin can do what Mike Evans does.
But how many teams have had two $20 million receivers in the building? I mean,
yeah, well, isn't Mike Evans is 16, right? Isn't he?
Well, that's because he was very friendly to the team.
Yeah.
But that money is gonna catch up at some point, though, right? I mean, if he took less this year, I don't know how they did it. They spread out. They gave him more as a signing bonus, or as
I know he's got 3 years on his contract. I don't think he's prorated too heavily. The Bucs have kicked like no money down the road, so basically nothing that they've done right now, or that they've done up to this point, is going to hurt them down the road. I think. I'm not sure if Mike Evans just agreed to a friendly deal or what. I mean, the first year of his deal was just really front loaded. I think
they restructured, something.
They restructured him
recently.
This past year, I think. Yeah, you're right. I'm seeing it here. Yeah, it was restructured to save about $4 million, thing like that. So yeah, his cap hit actually this season is $16 million. Yeah, so and then next 2 years it'll be 18 for each of the next 2 years. So. Again, man, you've got him locked up at the right time at a really reasonable rate, right up until. I mean, Mike Evans is 27. People forget.
I know, but again, okay,
say it's crazy.
If it's 18 and it's 20, that's 38. 25 for a quarterback. So in three guys, you've got.
If you sign Godwin, if you're talking about $26 million for Godwin next offseason or $24 million, whatever, right now DeAndre Hopkins is the highest paid guy at 27. And he's kind of reset things. So we'll see. Again, I don't think Allen Robinson's not going to get there this offseason. But again, Godwin's young. He comes off a 1,410 touchdown season. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to get 27 mil, but I'm saying 24. Yes, he's going to be in that conversation for sure. 25, that will happen. If the cap skyrockets, somebody will throw 27. If they go to 205 or 210 on the cap next season, I guarantee you somebody will throw 27 at him. And that's just a lot of money to tie up in wide receiver. Maybe the Bucs feel like they can do it. I mean, probably going to let a lot of guys in the 2022 free agent class go at that point in time. So something to think about for sure. But yeah, they are very different guys. It is hard to say one-to-one. Like you could compare trade to trade. Who's better at this? Who's better at that? But I think Godwin was better than Mike Evans this past season for sure. Mike Evans dealt with a ton of injuries, moved around a little more than he's used to. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to discuss when it comes to those two. Let's talk about tight ends real quick before we jump an offensive line to close up today's show. Mark, tight end room, Gronk probably almost definitely going to be back. Let's just assume that he is. We don't have to get into it again. OJ Howard obviously back. Cam Brate, $6.5 million on the cap right now. Alclair is a free agent. Don't know what to expect with him. It probably depends on what happens with Cam Brate maybe. Tanner Hudson, exclusive rights free agent. If the Bucs want him back, in simple terms, if the Bucs want him back, he'll be back. I don't know if anybody really cares. No offense to Tanner. But looking at this tight end room, they feel like they're very set for 2021. Completely in the dark beyond that mark. Tight end, sneaky position. If somebody's there, should we be talking about tight end as a possibility at 32 for this team?
No. I mean, no, I don't think so.
Not at 32, but on day two, maybe second or third round.
Yeah, you could see them doing that. Especially again, it depends on what pans out in free agency, and what they end up doing with Cam Brate. Certainly, if they end up cutting Cam Brate, OJ's only got one more year right now. He's on his fifth year. He'll be playing on his fifth-year option, and Gronkowski's probably only got one more year. So at that point, yeah, I think they would be looking at a tight end. I don't know about 32. I don't know where we are tight end class-wise. I mean, where would you –
It's a solid class. Yeah, it's solid class. Yeah. I mean, you're obviously not going to get Cal Pitts, but Pat Freiermuth from Penn State can block a little bit. And there's a kid from Notre Dame, Tommy Tremble, who gets after people. I think the Bucs are going to like him, and he's got upside too. So maybe he could be a second-round option for them, trade-down option. I don't know where he's going to go off the board. He hardly had any production at Notre Dame, but he's like kind of like a George Kittle type in that, like, very physical, very aggressive, blocks really well, flashed a lot of ability, but really raw. There's some similarities there. So there might be options for them. I'm more with you though, Mark. I don't want to spend a ton of time on tight end because, like I said, we'll come back to it on another show when we talk about wideouts. Probably
real quick. I just noticed in the chat somebody mentioning they see Scotty Miller in the slot. Scotty Miller is not going to be in the slot really in this offense. I mean, that's the reason that the Buccaneers, well, besides the fact Adam Humphries was offered a ton of money, Adam Humphries would not really fit in the slot in this offense, and Adam really wasn't a good enough guy to be an outside receiver. Scotty Miller is just not going to be a good fit in a Bruce Arians offense playing in the slot because of what they ask their slot receiver to do. You need a bigger, more physical guy. Scotty Miller would die if he had to line up, in the slot as a starter in this football team. So scratch that one off the list. I'm sorry. Go ahead. We're going to the offensive line now.
Right, yeah, they put guys in the slot kind of as situational type of things for certain routes, but
you're
talking about slot guy. It's definitely not Scotty Miller in this offense. But as for tight end, just touching real quick on what you said, I do think it'll be something that they prioritize perhaps in 2020 in next year's draft. This year's draft, I think they want to see how things go. See how things go with Gronk. See how things go with OJ Howard. I think they still like him. They're really excited by him. He just stay on the field. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think they want to see how things go. I'm not saying if they love a player, they won't take him. I don't think it's like we got to find our next tight end in this year's class at all, regardless of what happens with Cam Brate. Okay, offensive line. All 5 starters are back. Ryan Jensen, Donovan Smith, and Alex Kappa all in the last years of their deal right now. But all 5 starters are back. Beyond that, Aaron Stinney, that's basically it. John Molson, who they liked as an undrafted free agent from Boise State. There's really nothing else. I mean, there really wasn't much depth this past season. They pieced it together with people. AQ Shipley, Ted Larson, Larson, I don't know what's going to happen with him, free agent now, and Shipley had to retire because of the injury. There's no depth, and there's 3 potential question marks beyond the 2021 season. Now, I think Ryan Jensen probably gets extended, would be my guess.
Yeah.
He's nearing 30. He's going to be 30 in a couple, I think it's 2 months or something like that in May. So he's nearing that point where it's like, okay, he's probably not going to hit the market. He's going to be 31. He's probably not going to hit the market in time to get paid big. So let's give him a couple more years. Let's spread out his cap hit a little bit, and everybody will be happy. He's got his security. He can finish his career here, whatever. Donovan Smith is trickier. This guy is still 27 years old. Again, Bucs draft him young. And so I am not sure that he is going to be on board with an extension. I just don't know if that's really what he wants, because he knows he can hit the market after this year. So I say this to say if the Bucs want to extend him, I think they're going to have to offer a pretty decent extension, pretty good money, and you're going to have to hope his play doesn't fall off, because you're probably going to be saddled with him for another, counting this next season, probably another 4 years before you can get out of the cap. I bet that's the kind of contract he'd be looking for, guaranteed money over that term. So it's a trickier situation for the Bucs to be able to extend him just because his play hasn't been consistent in the past. I think he's trending in the right direction. I still would be a little bit skittish about it. Yeah. Like Donovan Smith, but top tackle money is tough, and Tristan Wirfs is going to command it at some point down the road, and so you just have to structure the contract. Right,
maybe they go. I mean, I think they certainly try and extend Donovan this year. I don't know that I'm with you. I don't know that they do that, because his agent is going to be smart and know that left tackles don't grow on trees, especially guys that have been as durable as him, regardless of his inconsistent play at times. Donovan can be as good as really anybody in the league at that position when he puts his mind to it. And we saw that at least through the playoffs anyway. He was as good as any tackle all season, to be honest with you. But they've got Wirfs, and so maybe that's where they look. Maybe that's where they look for a tackle in day 1 or day 2, a guy that they feel could be a right tackle, and they pay Donovan this year, and they see what happens, but let him walk after this year and move Tristan over to the right side, and then they've got a guy ready to step in on the right side in 2022. I don't know, but that's, again, what's so beautiful about winning a Super Bowl is you don't have a lot of holes in your team, and you can take chances. I mean, there's so many possibilities. I mean, we knew the Buccaneers had to have an offensive lineman last year. There was not any mystery to it, right? Even a couple years ago when it was Vita Vea or Derwin James, those were 2 huge need positions when the Buccaneers took him. Really, the last position that they took where you could make an argument they didn't need the guy was O.J. Howard, when they took him at number 19 a few years ago. There were probably some other bigger needs on the team, but he was a guy that was really a consensus top 10 guy in most of the mock drafts, or at least top 15, and they saw him slip, and it was almost like, I mean, we almost have to take this guy at this point. So anyway, but yeah, I'm with you. I think the Buccaneers would love to lock up Donovan for a few more years. I know that Donovan is more thought of inside that building than he is on the outside of the building, from the fans and even from the media.
Oh, yeah.
I took some abuse from somebody in the front office earlier this year when I made a little joke about Donovan Smith. Anyway, and his point was, go find a guy that starts 79 out of 80 games in his career. You know what I mean, at that position.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can just base everything on durability, because performance is a big part of it as well.
Sure.
But again, it's not like they haven't. It's not like he struggled his entire career. We've seen flashes of greatness from Donovan Smith, particularly down the stretch in the playoffs, and I think that's what they're banking on for the future. And certainly the play, the leadership, and having Tom Brady behind the center elevated the play of not just Donovan Smith, but the whole team. But really, a guy like Donovan Smith benefited as much from Tom Brady as anybody on that offense.
Right. And Bucs fans may agree or disagree, but there's no question if Donovan Smith hit free agency this year, he could reset the market attack. I mean, he would be highly paid. That's because of his youth, because of the fact that his plays
and it's
improved.
That position is such, it's
the
hard.
Durability.
Right.
Yes. I mean, he would get paid. There's no doubt about it in my mind. So lots to think about on the offensive line. Biggest thing though, even if Jensen and Smith do get extended and around long term, Ryan Jensen or Alex Kappa, you can't pay everybody. It's kind of like the Jordan Whitehead thing. Love the way both of them play. Think they're two of the most improved players in the team. But at the end of the day, like, you're probably not going to pay Jordan Whitehead, and you're probably not going to pay Alex Kappa if you're paying everybody else. So we'll have to see. I'm not saying they're gone after this next season, but they're going into contract years, and Kappa's going into contract year, and Aaron Stinney, maybe he'll get a shot to replace him, maybe. But I watched Stinney, and I thought he held his own. But I don't think I saw like a guy that you want an optimal long-term starter. More likely he's earned his spot and his respect as a backup here in Tampa Bay. So, what's the future of that position? You don't have a backup center right now that you trust to snap if something happens to Jensen. So you have to replace what they brought in A.Q. Shipley to do. And so there's all that to consider for the Bucs. I think offensive line is a position we might see. I don't think it might not be in the first round. Like I said, it's impossible to say what position they'll draft in the first round, especially right now. They are really in position to draft best player available. But I do think offensive line is a position I wouldn't be surprised to see them hit twice in this upcoming class, because they know how important it is.
Yep.
And they know that a bunch of guys are going into one-year deals the way it currently sits.
You can't go wrong drafting in the trenches, on the offensive side and really the defensive side. I mean, you got to draft them and hope a couple of them stick and hit. Again, statistically, even first-round draft picks are about a 50% workout. They work out 50% of the time. It drops when you get lower than that. So you just got to keep drafting them, man, and find some. I will say this: I thought that Joe Gilbert and Harold Godwin, Goodwin, always screw him up with Chris, but Harold Goodwin did a masterful job of that offensive line, breaking some bad habits that they had last year and from the previous regime with George Warhop, and just did a tremendous job with these guys. So hats off to those two guys. So whoever the Buccaneers do bring in, they're going to get a hell of a coaching job. If you look at it, John, and I don't want you to do this because I don't want you to lose your lunch, but if you went back and watched Alex Kappa as a rookie and where he is today, you don't even recognize that guy. Not even close. Not even close. So, and I attribute a lot to that, to the coaching staff and what they were able to do. So,
he keeps progressing at the rate that he is. He's going to get paid next offseason at a starter's price. And so, definitely happy for him. He's played great.
Jason Light will just find another D3 guy somewhere. That's what he loves to do.
And Scott and I talked about one of those options in last week's podcast. If you go back and check out that one, we talked about a couple options for them maybe on day 2 at the offensive line spots. I'll be talking about that too during the offseason as we move forward. Some names that throw out there at those positions. But right now, offensive line long-term, definitely something that this team could be targeting. There's very little depth for this upcoming season, and starters beyond that is something that they're going to be looking for sure. So also another fun thing is that at 32, that's usually one of the positions you can count on there still being some good options at, as centers, guards. We've seen a lot of, I think Travis Frederick was down in that range of the draft. Eric McCoy was later was early in the second round. So you trade back, there's some guys usually that are still on the board in those ranges at those positions. So be interested to see what they do. Again, there's so much to be learned this offseason about the Bucs because there's so many contracts and all that. It's the second straight offseason where we've had like just a ton of intrigue with the Bucs. So excited to see how it all shakes out. What is it, March 17th? Is that when free agency opens?
I believe so. I'll double check my date. I think it's St. Patrick's Day, so you can drink a lot and stick to Pewter Report because at 4:00 it kicks off.
Right.
Although, John, it was a few years ago before the legal tampering period, the 3-day window that the teams now have. It was completely different on free agency day. I remember Scott and I making a list of all the agents. All right, I had 20 agents. He had 20 agents. And at 4:00, we just started calling them. Have you heard from the Bucs? Blah, 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 to try and break that story. It's a little more anticlimactic now because you kind of get the rumors and you kind of know where guys are going to go before it kicks off. But it's still an exciting time of the year for me. I love free agency, maybe even more than the draft, to be honest with you, because as we saw last year, it really can change your franchise when you bring in a guy like Tom Brady. So
absolutely.
Anyway.
Yeah, free agency is a blast for sure. I almost forgot. Great reminder here, Courtney. Don't end the pod until you give your take on OBJ. Like OBJ, but I mean, it is a one have you done for me lately league. He has not done a lot lately. A lot of that's because of injuries. Some of it's because he just hasn't played as well. I don't know all the factors as to why that's been the case. I don't know how to feel about him long term. I know that he's not playing as well as Chris Godwin for a couple of years now. No. I mean, and also OBJ does not play Chris Godwin's role in this offense. No. He is not. That is not what he does. So it is not a fit at all. There's also just the fact that there's no point to doing it. I mean, why don't you just tag Godwin? Like, it doesn't make any sense to trade for OBJ. Also, the Browns have said over and over and over and over and over and over again that they're not trading OBJ. Nobody wants to believe them, even other teams apparently. But yeah, it's not happening. OBJ not coming to Tampa Bay, and it's not a fit, even if he did. Go after the guy that got you here already with Chris Godwin. I expect them to do that this offseason. We'll talk about the defensive side of this tomorrow on the podcast. We're going to go over all the defensive options. We'll talk more about J.J. Watt. We'll talk about Shaq Barrett. I saw some people asking. They don't think he's going to come back. I think Scott and I will have a different take on that tomorrow on the pod, but we'll talk about all of that at that point in time. Until then, thanks so much for joining us on another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.